Welcome to the Jay Martin Show and the pursuit of personal sovereignty. Now, the entrepreneur who is joining me today is a familiar face to my audience. His name is Alex Sukernick, and he is the CEO of Nova Royalty, a copper and nickel royalty company. Now, the reason I invited Alex on the show today was because this morning, which is May 24th, depending on when you're watching this, Alex put out his most recent news about their most recent transaction at Nova, which is a royalty agreement with Lundin Mining's Josemaria copper project in America, which is the most advanced large-scale copper project in the Americas. Now, the significance of a Lundin mining project for Alex is that this is the 22nd royalty agreement that Nova's put together since I met him about 2.5 years ago. Now, if you look at the roster of names in the other 21 royalty agreements they put together at Nova, you see every major mining company that matters. I'm talking about Anglo American, Teck Resources, Glencore, First Quantum, Newmont. It goes on and on and on. He is so specific about the agreements he puts together. And if you're looking for exposure to the copper and the nickel space, and your time horizon is like mine, like I'm investing for the 2030s today, Nova's a company I think you should take a look at. I don't give investment advice. I never tell people what to do with their cash. That's not what I do here. But I'm a shareholder of Nova and I'm buying, and that's why. I just think it's a very tightly run ship, and they're so disciplined with who they speak to about setting up royalty agreements, because there's been this surplus of new royalty companies listed in the last 18 months. And you have to be very careful about the operators that they're signing up these royalty agreements with, because in an inflationary environment, the inputs of everything go up. And a lot of production companies might become compromised when they can't afford the inflated prices of labor, gasoline, right? Transportation, security, you name it. And the operator matters. So if you look at the operators that Nova Royalty continues to work with, I'm continually impressed. Clearly I'm bullish, not gonna hide it. It is what it is. All right, here is the CEO of Nova Royalty, Alex Sukernick. Enjoy.
This is Jay Martin.
All right, I'm back with Alex Sukernick, Nova Royalty. Alex, how you doing?
Doing great, Jay. Good to be here again.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. And it was good to finally meet you in person last week at the conference in Vancouver.
Most certainly. There's nothing like in person after everything that everybody's been through.
Yeah, we've been chatting for 2.5 years via Zoom, so that was awesome. Why don't we start right there? You know, you were at my conference last week. We had about 2,500 people at a resource investment conference in Vancouver. I'd say sentiment was pretty bearish, Alex, and a lot of investors were saying, like, if commodity prices have actually done okay, given everything that's happening in the world, if we all believe in the narratives behind precious and base metals, why are the equities getting smashed? And, you know, I'm sure you're having to answer this question right now. So what's your take?
It's actually an important job right now, just talking to shareholders and I think giving them comfort in terms of in the middle of everything that's going on. It feels a bit of a perfect storm. You have very bearish market sentiment, so cash is flowing out of the market. You have a lot of inflation concerns, obviously, so that's obviously hitting the equities. I mean, the mining industry has reported some pretty heavy inflation quarter over quarter in the past 6 months. So there's a lot happening at the same time, and when that happens, you have stocks go down by a lot. I mean, commodity prices really haven't come down too much. We're really in the copper space. So copper prices drop, I don't know, less than 10%. Yeah. And then you see in copper equities go down 30, 40, 50%. So really it just feels like one of those periods in the markets where there's a lot of fear, but that also creates the opportunity, I think, as well. So I think in terms of how we see it, yeah, certainly there's a lot of things that can be done here in the coming period that can really grow the company in a good way.
I'm with you. And touching on that, you put out some pretty epic news this morning. So I want to talk about this. But before we do, and I'm obviously talking about the royalty on Josemaria, which is fascinating, by the way, because we've been watching this story, I don't know, for about 2 years, probably on this channel. We've had Josemaria on the show. We've had a few of the Lundins on the show. And so this is super timely and exciting. I want to jump into this. How does the depression in the equities market affect how you're operating? Like, does it make you more aggressive? Does it put you in more of a hunting mode on Nova Royalty's behalf? Talk to me about that.
I think what's happening right now is not just equity market. I think what's happening right now is you definitely have a sense of an economic downturn in place. And so I think what's happening is impacting the equity market. I think it's impacting individuals. It's certainly impacting people either looking for capital or who have royalties. So I do think that there's more appetite to transact among people, which I think is, provided that you can get to reasonable terms, is very healthy. So, I go back to kind of our earlier days. We were still private. We completed our financing to buy Nova Union in February 2020, just before the coronavirus really changed everything. And sort of in that time frame, spring 2020, summer 2020, going into our listing in the fall, we had a chance to build a really good pipeline with people that wanted to do things, that wanted to do deals with us, and that's what I think that's in part what allowed us to grow the company so successfully. So you never want to see bad things happen, obviously, but I do think that companies that have vision for what they want to be, I do think have an opportunity to find counterparties that will be very willing and productive. So that's definitely what we're trying to do.
All right, I appreciate that. Now let's talk about the Josemaria royalty, Alex. You put out some news this morning. For context, it's May 24th today, but give us the highlight reel overview. What'd you put out this morning?
Yeah, so we put out an announcement this morning that we're acquiring the right to acquire a royalty on the Josemaria project. So as I'm sure a big part of the audience knows, this project was just acquired by Lundin Mining earlier this year. It's really the Vicuña region is really the centerpiece of their future growth plans. And that includes 3 deposits. So that's Josemaria, which is the most advanced and due for a construction decision in the second half of this year. And Filo del Sol, which of course has been putting out some pretty incredible drill holes. And also the Los Helados project, which is both in Chile and Argentina. And so our royalty ground, it's a 0.5% net profit interest. Typically we've bought NSRs. In this case, the only royalty available was a net profit interest, and we felt comfortable with the way that it was done.
What's the nuance difference there, Alex?
The difference is the NSR is typically just really on the revenue basis, whereas a net profit interest has cost deductions. In this case, if you look at the NI 43-101 that Josemaria put out before, that net profit interest is broken out pretty clearly with the formula as well.
Yeah.
So we felt comfortable that it was perfectly legitimate instrument. Certainly, you have to take costs into account, but it's also shaping up to be a pretty low cost mine. So if you look at the margins they're forecasting, they're talking 60-70% margins in the first 10 years of the mine. So very high. And so we felt that it was really a unique instrument that we could pick up. And the royalty covers 2 pieces of ground. The first is the Josemaria, the entirety of the mine plan of the Josemaria project. And then the second one is the Argentinian side of the Los Helados project.
Right, because this project is right on the Argentina-Chile border, correct?
Josemaria is entirely in Argentina. And then Los Helados is both Chile and Argentina. So the resource sits in Chile, but there's also some extensive tenements in Argentina as well. And if you go back through the history, Helados and Josemaria used to be one project. It was called Project Constellation. Right.
Right.
And then a few years ago, the companies were separated, obviously, into 3, which is Josemaria, Filo, and GEX.
Yes.
But again, this is one camp, and if you listen to the Lundin family talk about it, certainly this is very much the centerpiece of their ambitions. And so if you look at Nova's history, we've really been very active in acquiring royalties on really what we think are the future copper camps of the world. So that's Tacataca, that's Vizcachitas West Wall, that's Nueva Union, that's Copper World Rosemont, that's Dumont. Really the mega camps. And this is certainly an incredible camp. And we're very happy that we got our first exposure to it this morning. And so we did the deal with private Argentinian individuals, and it took us a very long time in order to get to this point. But I think we're very happy to invest that time. I think that's really what we see as our business, is just building those relationships with local people, them understanding what we're trying to do, working across cultural language lines. And it's nice to get to a place where you can announce something. Yeah.
And, I want to touch on something you shared before we hit record. So first of all, Josemaria, it's like the largest, it's the most advanced large scale copper project in the Americas at present. If not, it's close. Is that correct? Yeah.
I think that's right. At this point, there's a construction decision scheduled for second half of 2022. And I believe that's the soonest out of any major project, because Quellaveco and QB2 are at this point ramped up or ramping up into full production. So in terms of pre-construction projects, I believe Josemaria is the soonest, is the closest one to actual construction.
Got it. And the significance of Lundin Mining as the operator, because like I said, before I hit record, I touched on the benefit of investing in royalty companies in an inflationary environment. And this was actually one of the most common conversations at my event last week. And royalty companies got outsized attention because of that, for good reason, right? The inputs are all going up, whether it's fuel, labor, transport, security, you name it, right? Yes. And companies have to deal with that. So it does affect royalty companies too, if you're not careful about the deals you're doing, correct? Because production could get compromised if you're not working with solid operators. Lundin's probably the best known name in the business when it comes to copper production. Elaborate on that a little bit for me.
I mean, that's really critical. The operator quality, I think, is one of, if not the greatest driver of the value of the royalty. Because mining is a hard business, and copper mining is a very, very hard business. So you really need top-notch projects run by top-notch operators. I mean, if you look at how we built the company, that's really been the focus. The only two major projects we have that are not owned by majors or very high-quality mid-tiers are Vizcachitas and Dumont. And Vizcachitas is considered to be a prime candidate to transition to a major in the next couple of years, if you listen to anyone who talks about the sector. And Dumont is the most advanced nickel project in North America, which is currently in the middle of a strategic process. It's so critical that you have all those pieces in place. So when we looked at Josemaria, Lundin is obviously a top-notch operator. They're highly committed. This is really their biggest priority, and it's so critical because it's so tough to get anything built. You really need a very committed, capable operator that can accomplish that task. So we felt very comfortable with that. On top of that, we have Takataka with First Quantum. They slated a production decision in late 23, early 24. And then Hudbay's advancing Copperwood and Rosemont in Arizona. That's clearly their number one priority as well. So it really does come down to having royalties on these projects that actually are strong enough to produce, and having the operators that are capable and strong enough to actually make that happen. And that's a really critical combination. And there's actually a lot fewer of those than you would think in the copper space.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, talking about the financing, I imagine you dipped back into the BD, the BD loan, the credit facility, correct?
Correct. It's small. We just took down $1.5 million from BD. They're very supportive shareholder, and they're the biggest shareholder of the company. So the terms on that, in terms of conversion price, I think it was $273. In the context of the market where we closed, it felt like a no-brainer, to be honest. And it's a small amount just for some of our immediate acquisition working capital needs. And I think more importantly, as we advance here and we see real opportunities, I think that will create a real opportunity for the company to grow a bit further. Because these are the types of markets which I think will favor a relatively small number of companies. And just given the quality of the asset base, that's actually the answer to our production. We are royalty companies, so we don't have the capital and operating cost exposure that you typically see. I think we're in a good position for sure.
Yeah. It was an interesting conversation at the conference as well, Alex. I want to just bring up and I guess get your thoughts on. If there was bearish sentiment on the copper sector, it came from the standpoint of the forecasts for electric vehicle adoption are maybe a bit, over ambitious, right? Or the renewable energy transition is going to happen as quickly as we'd like it to in the United States. And a lot of our thought leaders on stage, individuals like Rick Rule, he would butt in and say, look, it doesn't matter, right? You're focusing on the shiny object over here. There are billions of people around the world who just want a basic standard of living and don't have that right now, right? Unless you're expecting development and growth to pause in every corner of the world, the sentiment on copper has to be bullish. He's like, unless you're expecting a full global pause, right? The sentiment on copper has to be bullish. Forget about electric vehicles. It's a small piece of the pie. What do you think?
I think that's exactly right. People get very caught up on near-term projections and think that if they're for some reason not met, then the whole theme goes away. I just don't think you can think that way. The world is still growing. It's growing population-wise, it's growing consumption-wise. And you have finite supply of a commodity. And in the case of copper, it's probably the highest barriers to entry of any commodity out there. Building a big copper project is billions in a decade. And that's even for a really capable operator like a Lundin or a First Quantum. It's basically a decade's worth of commitment. And there's not that many operators who can do that. I mean, there's maybe 15 to 20 around the world that can legitimately build major copper mines, maybe. And if you look at where their pipelines are right now, there's hardly all of them have even one major greenfield that they're building. A lot of them are choosing to invest money into brownfield projects, but the industry will require a lot of greenfields. I mean, I think it was Anglo American who just said that they just finished in Quellaveco, and that they said the world for the energy transition will need 60 Quellavecos. That's a lot of Quellavecos at a time when there's not that many operators who can build. I mean, maybe 15 to 20 legitimately who can build them. So that's a lot of work for someone to do. So every which way you look, whether that's population growth in the world and the world growing, I totally agree with Rick. Supply constraints, and if you look at anywhere, everything's more expensive. Labor is more expensive. There's more compliance rules. The regulations are much tougher. Taxes are higher. Royalties are higher. So you've got a lot of upward pressure on the price, which I think is really inescapable and probably going to get higher. Probably going to get even higher. That's just the nature of the industry at this point.
Could you do me a favor, Alex? Could you zoom out a bit for me and talk about, so Nova right now, this will be the 21st royalty with Josemaria. Is that correct?
This will be the 22nd.
This is the 22nd. Okay, so Nova Royalty currently has 22 royalty agreements. And you touched on the timeline. So construction agreement planned second half of 2022 for Josemaria. Similar scenario for Taka Taka, but 2023, is that correct?
I think Taka Taka, if you look at what First Quantum has guided, it's late 2023, early 2024. Okay. So, I mean, I think you're probably looking at least a year behind. Yeah, so, just in time frame.
Where I'm coming from then is, times are a bit rough right now. If you look at sort of global economy macro trends, I had a lot of people at the show last week asking me, like, how are you navigating 2022, right? And where are you putting cash right now and all this stuff? And there's a variety of answers depending on what the question is. But the one answer you can always lean on is, like, make the decision, right, that sets you up for 2030. That should be the goal always, right? We get so trapped in short-term thinking when it's like, what are you doing that's the long term? Like, what's the 2030 plan, right?
Yes.
We're not traders in any part of our life. We shouldn't be. So zoom out for me and talk to me about Nova down that path, right? What's the 5-year, the 10-year, the 20-year vision, Alex, and what fires you up? Because that's how I look at this company, and my audience knows I'm bullish. I don't hide it, right? I continue to buy Nova, especially at these prices, by the way. You may not like the price, Alex. I love the price today.
I'm glad some people like the price. That's what I can say. It's and it's great to have shareholders who see it that way. I mean, I think speaking seriously.
Yeah, well, time horizon matters, right? Like if you're thinking about a 1-year investment, like sure, then stress out about the quarterly performance. But this is not that, right? And if you're thinking about how's my life could look in 2030, then if I liked it at 350, I should love it at
The reason we set up the company, the reason we've done what we've done, is because we wanted to own as much as possible of the next generation of copper projects. And so if you look at the timelines, they're all due to come online really in the second half of this decade. And it's impossible to recreate this portfolio. There's just not enough projects out there, to be perfectly frank, that are actually seriously moving at the same time. So, if you zoom out to the second half of the decade, and assuming the current timelines hold, and Taka Taka and Josemaria and Copper World Rosemont and hopefully Vizcachitas and the others come into production, you have a diversified portfolio of multi-generational royalties that are producing, and far in excess of your G&A, obviously. But really, it's just it's a unique asset, and that's something that gives you exposure to what we think is probably the world's most important commodity going forward. Because copper is just so central to the entire energy transition theme, whether that's electric vehicles, whether that's wind, whether that's solar. And when we started the company, we thought of it as purely environmental, the energy transition. But now it's become a national security issue as well because of what's happening in Europe. And people are certainly trying to diversify away from Russian fossil fuels and the like. So you really, everything that we're seeing points to the increasing importance of copper. Everything we're seeing points to increased demand for copper. Everything we're seeing points to increased difficulties of copper supply. So the projects that have the committed owners that are actually moving ahead will capture those benefits. Really, perhaps not that many projects will capture those benefits. And we're fortunate enough to have royalties on those projects. So we don't have the capital and the operating costs hindrances that the industry has to go through by and large. So we really think that Nova is set up in an ideal position going forward here. Obviously, you have the typical market volatility and things of that nature, but when you look at the fundamentals and you look at the high quality projects that we have, and we have cash flow from our entities already offsetting most of our G&A, so it's not something that keeps you up at night. and really, as we see the progression here of the assets going through, and we'll obviously be adding more as well. It's really exciting because I don't think a company like that could be recreated right now at all. I mean, there's just not enough inventory in the sector, and what this does do is position us to grow that much more in every direction and really be a consolidator of this copper royalty space, which is what we're aiming to do.
And when you look at the list of names that you've assembled, right? I mean, it's the all-star roster. It's Glencore, it's Anglo, it's First Quantum, right? It's Lundin, it's Teck, right? Like it touches on, earlier in the conversation, we discussed the importance of having the sound operator in an unpredictable environment. Inflationary environment, sure, but unpredictable in general. And I think we're there, right? Like we can all agree on that, right? So having those strong partners is step number one. And you're right, you can't do that twice, right? That's not something that can replicate. So, yeah.
Correct. There's just not enough projects. I mean, there's just not enough projects. And so when you look at the copper space and you think of it, what is the role for a royalty company? There's a role for a first mover, for sure.
Right.
Which is exactly what we saw when we started. And you've seen what we've done on the acquisition side. You really have to do that if you want to have a proper diversified company in the sector, which I think is very important. So now we're just excited about what the opportunity provides going forward. So as the markets do get more choppy, I don't think this is the last time in the next 5 to 10 years that you're going to have this kind of sentiment. And I think the people that will succeed in these markets, we have strong enough companies that can continue moving forward, will be those that really have a lot of really strong assets owned by really strong operators, and really giving investors that safety and upside in one package, which has really been the objective all along.
All right. Look, Alex, I'm going to let you go. I kept you longer than I planned. I tend to do that when we speak. But it's always great catching up. Congratulations on this newest transaction. Seriously, dude, you're the hardest working guy in the copper business. I love catching up with you. I know you're hunting down the New York listing as well, so we'll have to talk about that next time because there's always more to talk about. But I appreciate your time.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for watching this interview. Now, 3 things before I let you go. Number 1, I publish a weekly newsletter and I love writing it. I share my biggest takeaways and action items from the conversations that I have on this channel. In addition, my thoughts on current events, economic events, political events, and you can subscribe for free. Just hit the pinned comment right beneath this video, or just go to jmartin.club and you can subscribe on the website. I'd love to have you join the team. Number 2, ad revenue from this channel is donated to an organization that is super close to my heart called Zero Ceiling. Now, Zero Ceiling's mission is to end youth homelessness, and the way they do this is by giving at-risk urban youth the opportunity to relocate to beautiful wilderness areas and then provide them with supportive housing, career training, and just generally positive influences on their life. I love what they do. Check them out if you're interested. And number 3, if you prefer to listen to my content as opposed to watch it, you can find me wherever you listen to your podcasts. Just search for The J Martin Show. All right, thanks again.